So here's a quick overview of our agenda today. So we're going to start with our welcome and intros here. Then we will talk about some updates, attacks by the Trump administration on public lands. And then we will talk about the status of state parks in Missouri, the Shepherd of the Hills restoration, George Washington Carver outing, and Hahn State Park. Then we will preview some of our outings programs and more ways to get involved, and then we will close. So I think I'll go ahead and pass it over to Marissa.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And good evening, everybody. My name is Marissa Frazier, and I am the Senior Field Organizer, Conservation Program Coordinator at the Missouri chapter of the Sierra Club. And I'm located in Springfield, Missouri, that's land of the Kickapoo tribe. And I just want to talk a little bit tonight about what's going on the conservation front across the state. And I've got some awesome allies here tonight. I'll tag in some of our folks from our conservation committee. So I'm lead on the conservation committee, and we have some really amazing people that have been helping I've been here about 7 years, so helping me with that the last 7 years. And then, in the years at the Sierra Club before then. So much of the stuff that we're going to talk about tonight is thanks to many of the folks here, and just all of the members of the Sierra Club who took action and lifted up their voices to accomplish some of these things. And also want to cover some of the more dangerous things, or the things that we're watching for, and lift up how we can now take action to stop some of the threats that are happening to our public lands and natural spaces in Missouri as well. So my first slide here, I want to give a little bit of a coverage of what's going on federally and how it is affecting Missouri's natural lands. So the Trump administration has put a lot of things into place that are affecting us in our state parks and our National Park Service lands and national forest in the state. So some of those things are attempts to take away the legal authority to regulate greenhouse gases, weakening of the National Environmental Policy Act, so NEPA, and that the purpose of that act is to allow the public to comment on projects which affect the environment. So it's been able to give people a voice and push back against any dangerous changes in policy. And there's also the Fix Our Forest Act. So that's something that the Trump administration is trying to put into place, that's setting higher timber targets and requiring more logging. So it's a threat that's going on in our national forests. There's also been attempts to weaken the Endangered Species Act, and that has, for the last 50 years, been the most effective law that we have had in place to protect our wildlife. So it's something that we're actively watching and taking part in to push back against. More rollbacks include the Resource Management Plan under the Congressional Review Act, and reducing funding and personnel at the National Park Service, the U.S. Forest Service, and the Bureau of Land Management. The Department of Interior has made a lot of cuts that have been affecting the Ozark National Scenic Riverways, the National Forest Service, the U.S. Forest Service. And due to that political climate shifting, it's been causing a weakening of the rules and protections on federally protected land. So that's something that we're starting to see within the National Scenic Riverways, and kind of the fallout that's happening in terms of all of the lands that are managed federally across the state. And there's actually, I know, why are people doing this? It's a great question. There is one more that I'm going to tag in Carolyn Hufalt with, about the federal road list rule. So this is a really important one that we actually have an opportunity to push back against, and it would affect not only our wilderness areas across the country, but also there are 4 areas in Missouri that it would impact as well. So Carolyn's gonna jump on here and talk a little bit more about this and what we can do to push back so that we can maintain some of our wilderness and roadless areas in Missouri.
Okay, yeah, hi, this is Carolyn. I'm sorry, I was a little late in logging on. I was late because I was trying to do some very last minute research on this Marissa and I talked earlier. Um, uh, but give you some background. Uh, Beginning back in 2001, uh, 14 years ago, uh, there was the start of a phases of a roadless area inventory. And that was an effort to look at the public lands, National Forest, BLM, yada, yada, um, to see if there are if there are areas that had a less density of roads than other areas that could be considered for some kind of protection. The Forest Service is notorious for having a whole lot of roads. I mean, it's got more roads per square mile than downtown Los Angeles, probably. Yeah, that's probably an exaggeration, but they do have a lot of roads. And the idea was to find some places that we could protect, something short of wilderness protection. You know, full wilderness protection is no roads, obviously, no mechanical uh, uh, vehicles or machinery of any kind, lots of limitations in wilderness. But the roadless areas were just areas that were meant to be kept as roadless. They would therefore be somewhat primitive. It didn't mean the agencies couldn't do some logging in those areas, but they couldn't build additional roads to carry that out. And that really limited what they were able to do. And this started in 2001, as I said, was kind of a two-phase inventory process that it was called RARE, Roadless Area Resource Inventory. And there was a rare one and a rare two. If you ever see that in environmental history someplace, that's what that's about. Um, to make a long story short, we have, in addition to wilderness areas in Missouri, we have some roadless areas, which are also generally called sensitive areas. And they're listed there: Anderson Mountain, Big Creek, Spring Creek, and Swan Creek. These roadless areas would become vulnerable to building roads, to having roads built in their jurisdiction, and a lot of heavy management if the Trump administration follows through on its declaration that it's going to revoke the roadless rule. Now, revoking pretty much means just doing away with it. We don't know what the details might be because the Trump administration hasn't yet said, they haven't yet published any details or any plan or regulation that people can comment on. But we know they want to do it, and they want to do it just to have more areas to log and manage heavily. This is a really big deal out west in Alaska and many other places on the western half of the country. And of course, BLM land, we don't have any in Missouri, but it's big in other states. So this is a really big deal and a threat to quality conservation areas. And what we are going to be asked to do at this time is to ask our representatives to support a bill in Congress, which is called the Roadless Area Conservation Act. And simply that puts this roadless area rule into law. You know, there's a different category of instructions for the public. Obviously, a law really is very serious, and then there are rules and regulations that are also important, but they've got less staying power. They're more, vulnerable to changes, etc. So we are pleased that in the House and Senate there are two versions of a bill called the Roadless Area Conservation Act, which will protect these roadless areas. One of the things we want to do, and we'll get more information about this, provide more information about this to you all, is if you're willing to write your congressman or senator saying, please support this Roadless Area Conservation Act, we want to be able to have some things that you could add about how this impacts Missouri too. It's not just out in Alaska or in Utah or California. Let's, okay, let me just see. Helen had a question. Okay, I don't know that it's currently bipartisan. She asked if,
It's okay. I can look it up. No
yeah.
worries. I just didn't know. I don't know much
Yeah,
enough about
yeah.
it. Thanks,
It's
though.
fairly new. It's probably not bipartisan, but we might be able to get, say, a senator or a representative like Ann Wagner, who's in the second congressional district, that's kind of suburban, greater St. Louis area. It might be that some representatives, especially in the greater Springfield area, because that's where several of the currently protected areas are. They only total 25,000 acres in Missouri. I mean, that's the roadless area. Now, we do have wilderness area, wilderness with a capital W, federally designated wilderness, like Hercules Glades, for example, Irish wilderness. And those areas are protected. They're not going to be impacted by this roadless rule revocation, if you will. Okay, someone just posted something in chat. Okay, great. That very well could be it. So that's kind of what we're going to be asking you to do. And I said we'll be sending out, you've got the link there to the bill, and you're certainly fine to go express yourself about this in any way right now. But we are going to share something that will have some information about what it means to Missouri. And I see Eileen is on the call. Eileen, when I was looking up the history of this, I found a great little blurb that you wrote to Missouri Sierrans in 2013 about protecting these sensitive areas uh, under the roadless rule. I don't know if you remember that, but um, just thanks for doing that. Like I said, this was in kind of a couple phases, and in 2013, we were trying to get better protection and more acres added to these sensitive areas. So we've been supporting, the club, obviously, Sierra Club nationally has supported this roadless rural effort. In Missouri, we've had our part too here locally. So that's about all I had regarding that roadless rule issue. Again, though, the Trump administration has not put forth in writing a plan about how they're going to revoke this rule. When they do, we will have that will be another time to make comments. Maybe do some letters to the editor and write again, maybe to your representative. But we're not quite there yet. We're waiting for that to drop any day. Right now, all we have is this the knowledge that something bad is coming, and that now we can ask folks to support this bill that will protect the roadless areas. Anybody have any questions or thoughts or comments? Okay, you may, if any of you have some background literature or anything on potential more wilderness areas in Missouri, these roadless areas were part of that. We had a big wilderness campaign um, several years back now to add more wilderness to Missouri. We haven't gotten any more, but these sensitive areas were kind of the core starting point of what we wanted to consider. Okay.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Mm.
Really helpful, really insightful. And like Carolyn was saying, we'll be sure to follow up with information about how to contact your senators and representatives, and ask Representatives Cleaver and Bell to maybe co-sponsor it. Maybe Ann Wagner as well would be really good targets. It's not going to hurt to write to our senators as well. I think the main thing here is a lot of these Missouri representatives and senators don't necessarily know that this will directly affect Missouri. And so letting them know that there are areas in the state that will be impacted by this might be a really helpful talking point. And we can also share tools and tips for how to write a letter to the editor to get your word into local newspapers as well. All right, and a little bit more exciting news. I wanted to give a little bit of an update about the status of our newest state parks in Missouri. So in 2016, there were 4 state parks purchased under the Jane Nixon administration. And then the following administration that came in had threatened to sell these parks off. And that was under the Greitens administration. Some things happened. He left office early. And whenever Mike Parsons came in, it was up for debate what was going to happen to these parks. And thankfully, the Sierra Club stepped up. We formed alliances with other organizations who support our parks, and we lifted up our voices. And after about 4,000 phone calls and emails, we were able to stop the sale of these parks. Some of them were a little easier than others. The 11-Point State Park definitely took a little bit more effort. We were in the state capitol for 5 years in a row, stopping the sale of the 11-Point State Park as well. And happy to say that after all of that effort, we have won the protection of all 4 of those state parks and are in the process of helping get them open. So Bryant Creek State Park, phase 1 opened in September of 2023. So there's a really cool 5-mile hiking trail. There's a accessible 1-mile hiking trail that's up around the top of it. And phase 2 and 3 are on their way, and that's going to include some primitive backpacking areas and campsites and additional trails to be able to go and explore the more wilderness side of the park as well. That's actually, I put that in the chat as my favorite state park or natural area right now because it has the highest concentration of biodiversity of all natural areas in the state park system at least. So really cool spot, a lot of wildlife, a lot of plant species. Hope you all can get out and check it out. And we do plan to have an outing and get a group together whenever they have phase 2 open. So that'll be probably sometime later this year or early in 2026. So we'll definitely keep you posted and look forward to seeing you out there and exploring those trails with us. And in addition to that, Shepherd of the Hills State Park, so that's the one that's closest to Springfield. It's on the north side of Branson, and it is now a really treasured park because it is helping to preserve some of the last remaining natural areas that are abutting the booming metropolis of Branson. There's a lot of spread of parking lots and development there. So this one actually borders another Missouri Department of Conservation area. So it extends the natural landscape and helps create a corridor for wildlife and species to thrive and to protect the water quality of the Roark Creek that flows then into Branson and beyond.
Suzanne had a good question. So Bryan Creek near the trail has a lot of invasive species. Any plans to control these?
Yes, actually, we have been communicating with the state park director for the Bryant Creek State Park, and they are doing a lot of restoration and we are coordinating with them to do work like we have done at Shepherd of the Hills, which I'll talk about a little bit more, I think in the next couple slides, and help to do like invasive species removal to clear and get them set up for controlled burns. And a lot of times that's what these parks need, since we have suppressed fire for 250 years. A lot of times they just need some controlled burns to help revive the ecosystem. And it's a problem across the state that the state park system is very much working to address, and we are looking for opportunities to help with that as much as we can. Good question. And yeah, I'll talk a little bit more on Shepherd of the Hills, but the estimated time that will open, it kind of depends on when the restoration can be complete and the trails can be built and primitive set up just to help support it. We did advocate to keep it really wild, so not a lot of excessive development or like mountain bikes, since they're not allowed at the nearby conservation area. That's actually, it's a pretty fragile ecosystem. So in that space, they're going to keep it pretty minimal. So kind of to balance out the Branson scene. And probably early 2026 is when we expect at least phase 1 to open. In addition to that, Jay Nixon State Park, that's a backcountry area that's going to adjoin Tom Sock Mountain. And it is on its way. It's going through the conceptual development plan process. So it's a 10-step process that people get to give their input. So we'll be sending out information about that whenever there's a comment opportunity available, and advocating for what we want to see in the park. So typically that's natural resource protection, minimal development, and recreation opportunities so that people can get out there and enjoy it. And finally, 11 Point State Park. After many years of effort, it is on its way. They have done a couple rounds of public comment periods. We had a great turnout. They actually opened up the park whenever there was the full solar eclipse. So we were able to go out there and enjoy that because it was in the path of totality. A lot of people turned out. People are getting really excited about that park, and they're doing restoration of the historic features and creating trails and educational opportunities to showcase all of the neat things that are going on there. Okay. And Shepherd of the Hills State Park, going into a little more detail here. So this picture on the left is when we organized an outing to do aquatic species research. So we would go into the stream, would kick up rocks, stir everything up, and then hold the net so that it would catch all of the aquatic species that were living underneath all those rocks. And then that second picture, we were counting them, identifying them, doing research on how much of each species lives there. And then they have standards to show how healthy the water is based on that. And happy to report that there's very high water quality there in that section of the Roark Creek. And there's also a lot of restoration going on to create a riparian corridor. So basically like a buffer of plants to protect and filter any water that is running down into the stream. So it just helps to protect water quality even more. But it's a really, really lovely place. Like the water is crystal clear. Just love to go out there and sit by it. And it was a neat opportunity to take part in this aquatic research. So we did a couple of those already this year. We've got more coming up. We've also been helping with the invasive species research or removal and getting it set up for controlled burns. We did some wildflower seed collection and did a little bit of research on that. And after the burns, they then could go and spread those wildflower seeds out to help with restoration of the natural species. And the burns are really important on this one because back in the Native American times, whenever they were the ones actually managing the land, the natural frequency of how often the fire would go through there is every 2 to 3 years, because it's basically like a mini desert ecosystem up on top of these bald knobs, where the bald knobbers term comes from. And then we suppressed that fire for 250 years. So these glades were really in danger of being lost due to that and due to the encroachment of the red cedars that would grow up and turn it into more of a woodland. So we were able to kind of catch it in the nick of time to get this park protected and to do the restoration work. So it's been really awesome to help to transform it and see how much it has changed just in the last 5 years that we've been helping with that restoration. It looks very, very different from when we began, and the Missouri State Park System has been working on it with their Conservation Corps as well. And we were actually featured on the news, so we can drop the link in that chat, and if anybody wants to check it out. So there's been a lot more publicity about this park, and people are getting really excited to see it open soon. And Eileen actually recently led an outing to the George Washington Carver Monument. Eileen is here tonight. And this was an outing that was to celebrate the first unit of the National Park Service that was dedicated to an African American. It also lined up with one of the Trump administration's attempts to cut funding and sell off some of our national monuments due to those cuts at the Department of Interior. So it was an opportunity to go and to celebrate this national monument, but also to raise awareness to not sell off our national monuments. Eileen, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
Well, besides my interest in the Missouri State Parks, especially with the Trump administration's threats to our national park system, I've been attending Outdoor for All. It's a national campaign, but they also have national staff that organize monthly Zooms, and they come up with toolkits. So there's little signs that we're holding there I got from their toolkit. So I'm trying to do a monthly outing that is somehow a protection of our national park system, and Missouri State Parks as well. This national monument near Joplin really isn't threatened so much as the monuments that are out in Arizona, California, Utah, places like that, like Bears Ears. But the whole point is to educate people what's going on, using the materials and using our local state monuments, state parks, state whatever, that's connected to that. And so I'm going to be doing some more of those. And one thing I can suggest if you don't come on these outings is I really like the National Park Conservation Association, and their abbreviation is NPCA. If you want to get onto their website, because they go over all of the issues, and then they also have several actions that you can take. And from talking to my my United States senators, Holly and Eric, whatever his name is, they do keep track of the times I have sent in those emails, because I call them almost 2 or 3 times a week because there's so many things to call them about. So those actions do make a difference. Anytime you can connect an outing with a conservation issue is great. And so that's kind of what I've been doing every month. And my next one is to Onondaga Cave State Park, which is not a National Park Service unit, but it does have, it's registered by the National Park Service. So what that just means is National Park Service doesn't have employees there or give them money. But you can still use these nationally registered places or sites, historic sites, whatever, to educate people about what's going on with the Trump administration. And it's kind of getting me around to places that I haven't been to in a long time or have never been to. And it's a great way to learn. So check out the outings on Thomas Hart Benton meetup. And we're going to try to do one every month. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Eileen. And rolling on to more about our state parks. So more good news, actually. Our conservation team has been very active to protect state parks across the state, including our beloved Hahn State Park. So this one is about an hour south of St. Louis, and many of us know it and love it. And in the last few years, there was a major threat to it. There was an attempted silica sand mine that purchased the land. They tried to move forward with building a mine that would have threatened the water quality, air pollution, caused sound pollution, light pollution throughout the night, and it really would have impacted the beauty of this park. So we were able to build coalitions and advocate to stop it. We did engage in a lawsuit as well. And after several years of writing to our decision makers and really raising our voices, I'm very happy to say that we recently learned that the whole thing is shut down and there's not going to be a silica sand mine there. So very excited to announce that. It's really, really wonderful whenever we are successful in protecting our favorite lands. And if you haven't been out to Hahn State Park, I highly recommend it. During COVID, before everything was shut down, I hopped in my Subaru and I drove out there and I just camped in the back and stayed for about 5 days and just got to enjoy the beauty of that park and fell in love with it. And it's been really special to know that we have been able to protect that park and keep its natural landscape in such a pristine condition, because it really is a special place in Missouri. We've also been really active in the Ozark National Scenic Riverways. So this has been a really important part of our conservation work. And over the last 5 years, we have worked with the now former Park Service Superintendent. His name is Jason Lott. So he's there in the picture. And we've been coordinating outings where we've gotten a lot of our partners and allies together, and we would just float the river and stop for discussion to learn about what he's working on, what his priorities are. He would listen to what we wanted to see. And it was just a great way to build a strong line of communication and just keep in the ear of just advocating for those natural resource protections. And because of that, we were able to get a stronger roads and trails management plan put into place on the Current and the Jacks Fork rivers, including helping to get motorized boats off of the upper sections during the peak float season so that you can still have that natural experience without like the motors. And then they're still down in the lower sections, but it was kind of nice to actually be able to protect those upper sections and the true like wilderness feel in that park. And there were a lot of other things that went into place in that roads and trails management plan that we were a big part in implementing. And thankfully that did get put into action now, because due to the current political climate and the pressures placed on the National Park Service, unfortunately, we did lose Jason Lott. He's no longer the superintendent there. And now we are forming a different way of going about that continued work so that we can stay in communication and help to influence positive developments and natural resource protections within the parks. So actually, we have a really exciting event coming up in September. Due to the floods, the National Scenic Riverways were really impacted. There was a lot of debris, picnic tables washed out. There was one of the ranger cabins had actually recently burned down. Another one was flooded out. So there's a lot to do. And due to the Trump administration cutting a lot of the funding, and then they have reduced personnel there, we're going to step in and help with restoration of that park on September the 17th. And then, so helping all day with that, and then we'll stay out and camp out if anybody wants to. And then the next day we're going to be partnering with the Ozark Riverways Foundation to be leading a float trip where we're going to be meeting some really awesome people that were instrumental in the park's protection early on and have been around in the scene for a long time, and get to learn from them and their experience and build relationships with other National Park Service staff and just keep this work going so that we can continue to protect this amazing resource. So more ways that you can get involved. We do have a conservation committee. We meet monthly, and that's where we are strategizing and planning how we will take action to protect our natural resources. So one of the
Marissa,
pictures.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but Natalie had a great question. And I personally had this question too when I was putting the links in. So if the link for the float trip specifically does say September 17th on it, is that because it's kind of like a 2-day thing, or is this just, is the date incorrect on the link?
Oh, yeah, it's a 2-day thing. So restoration on September 17th, and then the float trip will be on September 18th. So
Okay,
Wednesday.
perfect. Thank you so much for the clarification.
Thank you for asking. So hopefully you can make it. You can come for one day, you can come for both days. If you RSVP, I'll be sending out information and helping to coordinate lodging. And hopefully you can make the whole thing. But if you can only come for one day, that's great too. Just make sure to register RSVP on both of those links if you intend to do both days. And more about the Conservation Committee. So this picture actually down here in the bottom right, this is at a public hearing regarding CAFO, so that's concentrated animal feeding operations. And that's something that we were able to recruit a lot of people. There were over 100 people in attendance, and 98% of those folks spoke out against these permits going in to allow for additional concentrated animal feeding operations. So these are like 75,000 chicken houses, or like 3,000 plus cows, like these massive scale animal feeding operations that are pushing local farmers out of business and causing a lot of waste and a lot of congestion in the food system because they are inefficient, and there's a lot of harm that is done to communities and to water and to the neighbors around them. So this is one of the things that we strategize for on the Conservation Committee. We work together to help write comments whenever there's opportunity on things that affect air and water quality in the state. And we are also working to organize events and outings and just join forces across the state to protect our natural resources. So our next meeting is going to be August the 13th. I would really love if anybody would like to join, to follow that second link there to set up a one-on-one meeting with me where we can talk about your interest and dive a little deeper into the campaigns and see how we can get you plugged in. You can also email me. My email is listed here. And if you aren't sure about joining the Conservation Committee quite yet, but you're interested in getting involved, you can still set up that meeting with me. You can also sign the petition to protect 30% of our nation's nature by 2030. So that's the 30 by 30 campaign that we've talked about in previous events. And that just is, if you sign that, it's basically saying that you support increasing our public access and public lands in the state of Missouri. And I also am just going to put a plug in here that in 2026, the park soils and water sales tax is going to be up for renewal. And this is something that is renewed every 8 years. It is usually passed with about 2/3 majority, so a pretty big majority in the state. Then that is what funds our state parks and allows so much of the conservation work in the state to continue. So it's a little early, but it's time to start thinking about it and to make sure that the communication and the public support is in favor of that park soils and water sales tax, again, because it is so critical to so much of the work that we are doing in the state to protect our natural resources. Okay, next slide. And as Eileen was saying, getting involved with the outings program is also really important. And it's a great way to get to know your local lands. So some of the great conservation leaders, that was their, the way that they described how to get people involved is you got to get them out to connect with these lands first, to fall in love with a place, and to love a place, you then want to protect that place. And so that's why our outings program is so crucial to the work that we're doing. We get people out, they see what's in their own backyard, they see what's going on across the state. And whenever people have that sense of connection, then whenever something comes up that threatens it, there's an opportunity and there's already a knowing. So it helps us to engage more fully to protect the resource. And it's important that we have people across the state who are involved with their local state park. There's public meetings at each state park every year. And there's different decision-making processes that are going on at all of them at all times. So the more that you spend time in your local natural area and you get to know what's going on and you get to know who's managing the park and you learn about like when their meeting is and what's going on the decision-making side, you can actually be the one to protect your local area. And it takes all of us doing that to truly protect the lands across the state. And you can also take your friends out there and get them involved. And the more people that are standing up for our natural lands, the greater our chance of success at protecting them. So we've got a link here to continue this conversation, to get involved as a volunteer. So please do reach out. We've got a number of ways to get in touch with us and would really love to talk with anybody who's interested in getting involved. There's many ways and it takes all of us, and it's the power of our volunteers who really carry all of this work forward.
Thank you, Marissa. Before we close out for the evening, I want to give some space in case that anyone has any questions or comments, as we're a little bit ahead of schedule, which is always lovely to hear. But yeah, if folks have questions, feel free to come off mute or put them in the chat and Carrie can help facilitate.
And I also, while the questions come in, I would love to give a shout out to some of our amazing Conservation Committee volunteers on here. So John Madras, he's here. He has been so instrumental in helping us understand the Missouri Department of Natural Resources and everything that goes on there. Jennifer Helber has been really helpful in helping the National Sierra Club actually take up the protections of the monarch butterflies and protecting the Endangered Species Act. Natalie Johnson, she was formerly at the Sierra Club and still very active in the space. You have been amazing to work with, and thank you for all of your work. Going down we've got to scroll, we've got a lot of folks here. Carolyn is our chair of our Conservation Committee, and got to hear from her earlier. Ed Bayham is a true river advocate, has been so helpful in protecting all of our waters across the state. Eileen, we got to hear from her. She's been instrumental in linking up outings with our conservation work. Dee Dockin is here. She's from mid-Missouri, and she's been a really a crucial ally for all of the years since the Missouri Sierra Club has been here and advocating